newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. Hope you good, guys. Hope you well, guys and girls, well, people, human beings who are listening to this podcast, and non-humans. As long as you're listening, welcome. Hope you had a good weekend. Last week has been quite busy, not for comedy or for podcasting. I think I've only done a couple of episodes. No, I've only recorded one episode. Besides of that, I've just been trying to survive the heat wave that's happening in the UK at the moment, um, and picking up some extra hours in my day job. That was also going on, and hopefully, I'll see the fruition of the financial benefits from doing all those extra hours on my next paycheck. That's pretty much how it works. But besides of that, I'm good. I'm okay. I had a pretty good week. Um, been again feeling tired, but I don't know why. Like, although luckily I've managed to get back into the gym, I feel like my back problems are pretty much gone, which is good. And I don't have any other issues. So I've actually managed to be in the gym quite frequently, pushing weights around and stuff like that. And it felt nice. I've got back into running as well, which is brilliant. Because I'm going through the process of actually getting a uh, coaching diploma in running. Um, that's new, and I don't think you expected to hear that from me, right? It's pretty crazy. Yeah, you can be surprised. I am also surprised that I was allowed to do it. Now I'm joking. I love it. I think it's going to be quite good. Be beneficial for me, and I want to a little not dream, but because it's something that can be achieved. I want to be able to organize and host a running club. And although again it's not a fast running club, bear in mind, and actually this is why I'm so into it. This is why I want to get the coaching, the diploma, the certificate thing, is because I want to you know show that you don't have to be the fastest runner to be able to organize those things and to be able to make people feel welcome. And I think it goes without saying that running clubs are a place for people of all levels. Then it also shows that, look, I'm a slow runner. I can go the distance. I've done a couple of half marathons in the past, but they weren't fast by any means. And that's good. That's okay. That's cool, and people should be proud of that. People should be happy to join a running club, knowing that they might be further behind, and you know what? I want to be with them. I want to help and to keep these people in a good spirit and state of mind, and be able to look after them. Anyway, that was a bit of a sidebar. Um, this week's episode is it's a pretty sweet one. It's with Steve Jameson. More, I don't know if more, but I want to say like more, at least in the comedy industry, or even for like people who are you know watching comedy. Saul Bernstein. That's a more perhaps a more known name. That's actually how I knew Steve before I knew Steve. I knew of Saul Bernstein before I knew that it was actually Steve Jameson who was Saul Bernstein, who made the persona of Saul Bernstein. And I had the pleasure and the honor to hang out with Steve. I think as this episode is coming out, he might be, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's on holiday, and that's good. I think he deserves a nice break. you know. But yeah, the episode was recording and taking some of his time was pretty cool, and we ended up chatting about a lot of things before we pressed record, and then we were like, hey, let's press record, and allow everyone to enjoy the our conversation. But he's a cool man, he's like such a cool guy, and it was just a pleasure to listen to him, and he's got uh incredible story, you know and I'm really excited to let you listen to that conversation, and that's precisely what I'm gonna do. Before I do it, though, is there anything else I need to tell you? Well, yes. So September 5th, the tickets are out for the show, and then I've also got September 19th and October 10th. I'm gonna put on a show. The first one, the September 5th, is at the Angel Comedy Club, and then the other two are gonna be at the Camden Comedy Club. For more info, check my socials, check my website, and I think that's it. That's it from me. Enjoy the episode, and I'll catch you before we depart. Right. So, Steve, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Your? I mean, it's a bit of a heat wave in London.
Yeah, well, I'm yeah,
Um,
I'm in Cheshire, I'm in Buckinghamshire, and there's a heat wave here too, and it's glorious. I'd sooner have this than winter
yeah,
any time.
really
But yeah, for my old bones, they need heat.
makes sense. It's fair enough. I feel like I mean I sweat when it's like 50 anything above 15 degrees. So it's not the I'm not having the best time, but in the
Ah,
what in the respect of that this is only gonna last 2 weeks and then we're going back to
yeah, two
rain
weeks,
and
two
misery.
hours,
I'll
another two
take it,
hours, and then that's it.
and then that's it. So yeah, in looking from that perspective, it's okay. I'll take it. But yeah, so
Yeah,
what have you
I could
been
live like
what have
this
you been
all
up
year.
to? Well, that I think that's the dream.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could live in the sunshine. My son lives in Australia in Sydney, and I spoke to him this morning. It's winter now. It's 4 degrees this morning. 4 degrees, and
Four.
it was 24 when I spoke to him here.
I didn't know they can go. I mean, that shows my uh, how what's the word, like how much how little I don't I know about Australia, but I didn't know they can go to 4 degrees there.
Yeah, they well, I didn't either, to be honest with you. I know they have a winter, which is our they have their winter in our obviously in our summer. That's what they have. They have
Oh, it's the
they
same
have a hot Christmas. That's their
because it's
summer.
the same. Yeah, but that's a bit weird. I mean, again, coming from where I used to grow up in a town where Christmas was like 2 meters of snow, 2 meters high, not length.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then yeah, to have actually, I think, I don't know if you heard of anyone, or like if you have like Eastern European friends, but we used to make fun of people who would go on holidays over Christmas to hot countries.
Right.
That's like a Romanian, that's like again at least a Romanian thing, where if someone goes to say like, oh, they go to Egypt for Christmas, would be like, yeah, of course, why would you not go? How can you go to Egypt for Christmas when you don't have snow there? And they're like, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah,
I'd be like, no, outrageous.
yeah. And my grandparents came from
But
Belarus. I actually thought they were from the UK. I always thought they were from Russia and possibly the Ukraine. But I did the what do you call it, that ancestry thing, and it turns
yeah,
out it just said that I couldn't believe that I'm actually 99% Jewish. Who knew, right? Unbelievable.
nice. Yeah,
And it
that
turns
was a
out
big surprise, eh?
Belarus Ukraine borders, but they would never. My
I
grandparents
mean,
would never talk about. I was in my 20s, and both grandparents were dead. My mother's parents, And I said to my mother, you know, where did they come from? They would never talk about it.
How
My mother
long
was so
ago?
close
Like,
with her parents.
and they would still never. I mean, it makes sense though, because I feel like my parents are very cagey about, or like they were very cagey about the talking about things that have happened, or like the
Yeah,
how where the family is from. It's kind of like, yeah, we're here. That's it. Don't worry about anything else.
yeah, yeah. They didn't, you know.
And what? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say it never even concerned me till I was in my 20s, and suddenly I woke up
But
one
then,
morning
were
and
you?
said to my mother, you know, where were they from? And she said they wouldn't say. She knew
And
somewhere, Russia, Ukraine. She knew somewhere around there, but they would never talk about their experiences. They never. I mean, obviously they left because of the pogroms. Um, they both came over independently to London, and my Zeta ended up. He didn't like it here, and he went to America, and he got married in America, and he had a son. In the meantime, my bubba, my mum's mother, she went over with her brother to New York. The brother didn't like it, but my bubba loved it there. But the brother insisted they came back, so they did come back. And then my Zeta, or the man became my Zeta, left his wife and child in New York and was a bigamist. He came back and it was introduced to my bubba and got married. And we never found this out till they were both dead. We had
no
my
way.
mum had some cousins, well, obviously my cousins too, but my mum's first cousins were in on Miami Beach, and they were talking, and somebody said, "Where are you from, England? Did you ever know a Simon Simmons?" He went under Slutsky, Shire, Lampay, all different. God knows what he was up to. But he changed his name a million times, his surname. So I'm guessing he was a bit of a gunner. I can only guess. Why would you keep changing your name? And they said, "Did you know Simon Simmons?" And this is my auntie Becky. She said, "Yeah, it was my mother's brother." She said that Mumsa. She said he was a bigamist. She said he left a wife and a child here. And when my mother found that out, she was absolutely broken. Like my mother must have been maybe 50 at that time, and
Oh
and I
my
just sat
God.
down and I went, "Listen, you were born out of love. You know, whatever he did before, they both loved you, and you know raised you and two brothers. So because she said, I'm a bastard. I went, I know you're a bastard. I said, but nonetheless, you're still a yeah, because she thought she was illegitimate. I said, you're not illegitimate. I said, they married. You were married in a shul, and you were born and raised, and yeah, but
Oh my
she
God.
died an unhappy woman that really broke her up.
That's really sad.
Yeah,
But also, you know what? In again, it's fascinating as well at the same time because you see. Well, this is the thing. Actually, I've read a book recently, and I've read about like single like families from New York with mother. Apparently, again, it was like quite a bit of a trend. Apparently, that a lot of men would run away because they felt like they weren't able to provide for the family. So then it was just like that's the exit. The way
yeah,
is just to go and to run away. And it's actually, again, I find this quite fascinating at the same time because I'm like, I only read about it last week, and now here I am speaking with someone
yeah, yeah,
who's heard like who's got like his family story that has a link to it.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
My,
it's sorry, go
yeah,
on.
my father's father came from the same shtetl, the same village as my mother's father, but my father's mother was first generation. She was born in England. My father's mother,
Right, right.
and apparently my father's father wasn't a particularly nice man, but I mean, he was. I think my father was 14 when his father passed away, so obviously I never met him.
Right. And then what? Because then you're, but then you're like born and raised in London,
Yep.
and so were your parents?
Yeah, both born and raised in the East End of London.
No way.
Yeah, I mean like Whitechapel, where Jews migrated to. That was kind of
Yeah.
a first stop for a lot, and then obviously they moved. My parents moved to, or both grandparents moved to Stamford Hill, Stoke Newington, And then
Yes.
a lot of people went to Ilford, Gants Hill. They went that way. But yeah, we were North London.
And how much when you were again when because when you were born around that time, how much of like your family's history did you know? Because obviously you talked about how you only found out your like mom's family story later in your life and later in hers. But then, and also you did mention that when you were 20, around 20, you asked about where your grandparents were
Yeah.
from. But then were you like from a close family, or like were you like visiting each other? Were you living nearby to each other?
Yeah.
Were you speaking
Oh, yeah.
about anything else perhaps but this?
Yeah. I was right. My first 4 years of my life, we lived in the same house with my Bubba and Zayda, my mother's parents.
Right.
At the age of 4, we moved to Cazenove Road, where a lot of the Frummers are. You probably heard of Cazenove Road. And
No, I didn't actually.
we lived in an apartment building. And my father was working away a lot at the time. And I think we were there for about 4 years. But what happened was we came home, my mother picked me up from school one day, and we came home and we were on the ground floor. And the dining room, or the lounge rooms, the window was open. And my mother, I could see my mother. I went, what's happened? And my two cousins, my mother's brothers, two sons, were in the flat, and we'd been burgled.
Oh.
The two of my cousins had walked past and saw the window open. Couldn't work out why. Went in, and there was a mess in there. And my mother was like a very nervous disposition. So at the age of 8, we moved back with my grandparents because my father was working away
Wow.
quite a bit. So we ended up going back to my grandparents. But no, it was a really close family. But we never, I mean, as a kid, it never occurred to me to wonder where they were from or to ask questions. Just,
Were you raised? Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, so that was it. What you're going to ask, was I raised Jewish?
Yeah, like yeah, that was my question. Yeah,
Yeah.
whether you were and whether was he like religious, was he non-religious?
It was,
Well,
well, my Bubba and Zayda kept kosher. That's the first thing.
right.
Coming up to my Zayda died about 6 months before my bar mitzvah, but about 18 months before my bar mitzvah, he made me later fill him every day. So I did that, and even after he died, I carried on till I was bar mitzvahed, and then stopped. But out of respect for him, I knew that was the right thing to do, to keep laying the tefillin.
No way.
Yeah, and then I stopped, and then yeah, I've never been particularly. I'm a cultural Jew. I was born a Jew. I'll die a Jew, and I'll be happy to die as a Jew, and proud to die as a Jew. It was tell you funny. I don't know which part you're involved with the shul, but we did. There's a Chabad shul in Islington, and we did a couple of shows to raise money so they could have a scroll for the Torah, and it cost
Yeah.
like $30,000 or something. You can only get it done in Jerusalem. We did a couple of
Yes.
shows to raise money, and I think the first meeting I had with them, and the rabbi is from New York, and I had the meeting with him in Islington, and because I've got friends live around the corner, I said to them, "Listen, I'm going to be at the Islington Green. Why don't we have lunch? I'll go there and we'll have lunch together. I'll come straight to you and we'll go to a restaurant." Okay. So we have a lovely meeting with the Rabbi Mendy, and when we finish, I said to him, "Listen, I've got to go." I said, I'll organise the shows. In fact, I organised it. They'd got Milton Jones to do it. Milton had been friends with somebody, so he was the
Oh
star of the
wow.
show, and I booked Josh Howie and Andrea Hubert. And very rare for me, I compared it. I hate comparing, but it was a mitzvah. It was a mitzvah, so I did it. But the great thing was, as I was leaving, Rabbi Mendy said, "Steve, would you like to lay to film before you go?" I said, "I'll be honest with you, I ain't got time to lay anybody. I'm having lunch with friends." Okay. And he took it really well. I know it was a rude thing to say, but it never occurred to him. I just said it. But he was a lovely, lovely man, and I think they've ended up they raised that we got we got the money, and I think they're doing something. I believe in September it's going to be over in England, and they're going to do a kind of a service or something in Islington to celebrate. So I'm delighted
No way, that's beautiful.
I did something to help out. Because basically, I don't do very much, apart from going out every night and saying I'm a Jew.
Well, what's now? That's a good. Well, that's a beautiful story, and now it's also a pretty good segue into getting to understand
What I do.
how did you, yeah, what you do, and not only what you do, but um, I guess why you do it, like what got you into it. What was it? What were you always a creative child? Were you always like was comedy your first outlet for creativity, or was it something else?
No, my first creative outlet was music. So from the age of I don't know, always from a kid listening. My parents bought records, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Peggy Lee, Tony Bennett, and I loved all that. And then when I was about 9, I heard rock and roll. So then I'd have heard Elvis, I'd have heard Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and that for me was that was the start of my life, and
Right.
that's what I wanted to do, and that was the dream, and I kind of lived the dream because in the 60s and 70s, I was actually in the music business.
No way.
Yeah, and
Well,
in the 60s, I was with a double act called The Truth, and we had a hit record, and we were on Top of the Pops. And then we split up. He ran off with my first wife, so the act had to disband.
sorry about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's life. But that was interesting because, you know, when I think about it, I always think forgive and forget. You know, and I do. In that particular instance, I've kind of forgiven and forgotten. Well, no, I'm not forgotten, but I've forgiven. But I'm looking 50 odd years ago that happened. You know, and then in the 70s, so that was 60s. In the 70s, I did a solo album. It was kind of during that singer-songwriter period, and I did an album, and then I got very lucky. We made a record which became a kind of a dance club hit. So again, I had some success with that. Not big success, but a little bit of success with a record which is still played in northern soul dance places. So I had that.
Very cool.
And comedy. I mean, I love telling jokes. I have to say that, but it never occurred to me. Not once did it ever occur to me to want to do comedy. And interestingly enough, when my first marriage broke up and the partnership dissolved with my singing partner, the manager that we had also managed David Bowie. I'm guessing you know who David Bowie was.
Yes, yes, that I know.
And Ken said to me, "We'll go out for dinner." He said, "I said, I want to talk to you about what I do from now." It's okay. David's going to join us. Anyway, David didn't join us that night, and we had dinner. And Ken and I must have been 23, 22,
Wow.
23 years old. And we sat and had dinner, and Ken said to me, "You know, what do you want to do?" And I said, "What I want to do," that singer-songwriter thing was starting, and I started writing some better, some more mature songs than I'd written when I was younger. And I said, "I really want to try and get an album, do an album." That's what they were selling at the time, albums, and maybe do folk clubs or something, I don't know. And he said to me, he said, "Okay," he says, "Right, you've told me what you want to do." He said, "Here's what I think you should do." He said, "I'm going to send you to America for about 6 weeks." And I'm looking at him, and he says, "What I want to do, so you stay on the East Coast for 3 weeks, on the West Coast for 3 weeks." He said, "You'll take a notebook with you, and you'll make notes." He said, "When you come back, we'll talk about the notes that you've made. First, you'll see your family, then we'll talk about the notes." And I said to him, "Ken," I went, "You know, all I need to know about what's going on in America, I can read Rolling Stone magazine, and I know what's going on." And he said, "No," he said, "You're not listening." He said, "If you want to be a singer, I don't want to manage you. If you want to be a comedian, I'll manage you." And I went, "Why the fuck do I want to be a comedian?" that, why? That's not what. He said, well, he said, I think you're a funny man. He said, you're neurotic. He said, I'm a neurotic Jew. I'd always thought that. And he kind of confirmed it. And I said, the last thing on earth that I want to do is be a comedian. I said, it just makes no sense. He said, in that case, we part company. And we did. We parted company. But as it happens, I started writing songs with a Jewish guy that I knew from Stanford Hill days. I just bumped. We were both in the schmutter trade, our day jobs. And I saw him one day in the street, and he said, "Oh, I hear you're not friends with Frank anymore. Are you still writing songs?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd like to try and write some songs." I went, "Why?" He said, "No, because I was good at poetry at school." And I went, "All right, let's give it a try." And I'm a great believer in Borscht. You are where you're supposed to be. And we started writing songs together. And we wrote some good stuff. We wrote some shit as well, but we wrote some good stuff together. And in fact, I'm on Sunday. He lives in the south of France now. My wife and I are going over to stay with him next week. We're flying out on Sunday.
No way.
So Marshall and I've known Marshall since I was 14. So I've known him 64 years.
That's beautiful.
And then we managed to talk our way into, I talked my way into somewhere, and we ended up recording an album, as I say, and then that kind of got me back into the music business. But the weird thing was, because I always say to people, like people say to me now, you're still working. At your age, you're still gigging like 2-3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week. And I said, yeah, you don't give up show business, it gives you up. So the music business gave me up. Now the phone's still ringing, I'm working, I'm having the best year in comedy that I think I've ever had, and I don't know why. It makes no sense. The act is pretty solid, but it was last year as well. But whatever. But the thing was that years went by, a couple of more marriages went by, and then my third marriage had failed, and I was working for a Jewish company in the packaging business, and one of the girls there, French girl, I don't think she was Jewish, but she was like Jewish. And she felt like Rachmana, she felt pity on me. She said, "Look, I'm having dinner with some friends before Christmas. Come over." And I go there, and that night I was particularly funny. I just know I was the life and soul of the dinner party. There was only 4 of us, and the other girl there was an actress, and she said to me, "You ever thought about doing comedy?" And I went, "No." Now bear in mind I was 46 years of age, and I'd never thought of doing comedy. And she said to me, "You should think about it." She says, "You're a funny man." I said, "Well, how would I do it?" And she said, "You know what Time Out magazine is?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Right, buy Time Out magazine." She said, "Probably in the new year, like in a couple of weeks' time, they'll say people are starting comedy workshops for the new year. Go into one of those, and you'll be with like-minded people. There'll be, I don't know, X amount of people, all trying comedy for the first time." And Christmas came and went, but something very funny happened during Christmas. Now, I'm an only child, but I had 2 cousins, and one of them was like the brother I never had. Absolutely, I could cry thinking about him now. Absolutely love him. And I was really down. My third marriage had broken up, and I was really fucked up. And I phoned him up. I said, "Listen, I need to come." He was living in Brighton. I said, "I need to come down for a few days." He says, "Come down." He said, "Want to come down Boxing Day?" I said, "Yeah, okay, or day after Boxing Day." I go there, and it was a beautiful day. It was very cold, but the sun was shining, very blue sky. And he said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm no good." I said, I don't know what to do." He says, "Come, we're going to go for a walk on the seafront." So we walk along the seafront. And he says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I've got 2 choices. I commit suicide or I become a stand-up comedian." That's how bad, I swear to you. And I was kind of half serious. And he held my shoulders. He went, "Commit suicide." Okay. At which point we both started crying. I came back and I was buying Time Out. And then there was a couple of comedy workshops, which I didn't do because I was frightened. I thought, "Well, no, I won't do that. I'll wait for the next one." And then, like at the end of the month, one came on. I thought there probably won't be another one till spring or something. And I went and did it. Funny enough, the one I did, it was with a guy called Tony Allen, and Jeff Innocent did the one the following year. The guy did one. He just
Wow.
did it in the February March, an 8 week thing, and then Jeff did it the following year. And I think after about a year, I was the only one doing anything from that class. And I think when Jeff did it as well, a year later he was the only one. The other 10 people had dropped out and weren't doing it anymore. And I wasn't that good. I was kind of a middle-aged guy trying to do comedy. My hero was and still is Woody Allen as a comedian. But there were other people. I loved Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, and then you got a whole bunch of Joan Rivers, Rodney Dangerfield. Oh God, can't think of his name now. Buddy Hackett, people like all those old Jewish guys who were great, insult comedians. There were just so many funny Jews. Because once I started doing it, then I kind of looked into it, to find out, and some great comedy routines. There was a guy, Red Nichols, I think it was Red Nichols, and he used to go to the roasts, the roasts that they have.
Yeah.
And there's one where he would do a thing. He would make it. He would say, he said, "I'm here." He said, "At Levi's lunch." He said, "They had a lunch for Levi. They had a lunch for Adolf Hitler." He said, "They never had a lunch for me. Why didn't they had a lunch for Hitler? Why would they leave me Hitler?" And he'd pick all these people from history. So they made a big lunch. They made a whole Zimmers from him for they but just
What? Because sorry, go on.
yeah, no, there were just so many funny people, and obviously a lot of non-Jewish people too, but predominantly the Jews. And then I think one of the other before I had that dinner, there was a show. There was something on television which gave me a little clue. It was a thing that was on. Used to be a series called Arena, which was on BBC. I think it was on BBC Two, and they did a thing on Jewish humour. You can find it on YouTube. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. First time I saw Billy Crystal was on it. Gilbert Gottfried was on it. I think Rita Rudner was on it. There was a whole bunch of and Paul Reiser, and I'm watching. I'm thinking, God, these are Jews. They're funny. It was just a lovely. I never thought I would do it, but it was just I thought I wouldn't mind being part of that. And then,
And that was
then at the age of 46,
sorry, go on.
then at the age of 46, I started doing stand-up comedy.
And that was as Steve Jameson.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
I did.
But
I did an Actors Me for 10 years, and within the 10 years, created Soul. Mark Mayer had an improv group called Juvenile, and he did a workshop for improv, and I thought, I'll try that. I think it was like £10 every Sunday for 8 weeks, and it was fun. I wasn't particularly good at it, but it was fun. And on the very last one, he said, "Could everybody hang around? I want to talk to you individually." I did, and he came over to me, and obviously I knew him because I'd done a couple of gigs with him. And he said, "Look, Ian Stone's leaving. Would you want to take his place?" So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And how did we do it? During that, we used to do every other Thursday at the downstairs at the King's Head.
yes.
And the thing was called Juvenile, but JEWVENI.
Yeah.
And we would do it, and we would take the audience suggestions and stuff like that. Then we started creating some characters. And I was in the packaging business with very nice fancy carrier bags. So if you go into a menswear shop and buy a nice jacket or trousers or a shirt, you come up with a nice carrier bag.
Yeah.
And I worked for a company, a Jewish company. We imported all our stuff from Italy, but I used to deal with some of the customers in I was basically office bound, but a handful of customers in the West End I dealt with, and they were mostly Arabs, and they had this kind of accent that there was like I'll give you a perfect example. I was on with at Mark's thing at the King's Head, and we said, right, can give us a subject to do, and somebody in the audience said, right, you're in a shoe shop, you're the customer, you're complaining about the shoes to the salesperson. The salesperson was Merrill O'Rourke, who did Juice for Gaza
Right.
last week, right? But he did that, and then somebody shouted out, and you're an Arab. And I just did the voice from this. There was a shop in Jermyn Street in Piccadilly, and he had a very husky kind of voice. And I went, and I just kind of, I went, hang on, so I just took my shoe, I went, this shoe is shit. I don't like this fucking shoe. The Jew made it. I think a fucking Jew made it, right? And they got a really big laugh. And then we did it a couple of times. And then Mark phoned me and he said to me, listen, we got this private gig at a hotel for a bar mitzvah, a private gig in near Heathrow Airport. He said, I want you to do the Arab. So it's okay. And we did the thing. I don't know if you were in this country when you saw it. Blind Date. Cilla Black would host the show. She was a singer and a TV presenter. And basically you'd have three men sitting behind a curtain, a woman at the front, and she would ask each one of them a question. And at the end, she decided which one she wants to go on a date with.
Yes. I've seen it, but I only saw it because I watched The Office, the UK Office.
Right. Okay. So
And there is a
the
scene.
general idea. So
Yeah.
we go, and
Yes.
Mark used to do a character called Ronnie Shmoni, who was an Israeli soldier. He does a great impression. I don't know if you ever heard it with as an Israeli soldier. And there was a Yiddish guy called Frank who was an actor, and he went as a frummer. And I said to Mark, I've created this new character. I hadn't done it. Nobody had seen it. But I've created this character at home. I want to do it. But he said, I've not seen it. I went, Mark, trust me. I said, I just know. And he said, listen, we were getting like 350 quid for the gig each.
Yeah.
Gig. And he said, I don't want to I said, I will not fuck it up. I said, I swear to you. I just knew in my heart. And I had the name, Sol Bernstein. And he wasn't a comedian, he was just a man. There was no backstory. And we went, and then the woman picked me. She never saw me, and she said, at one point she said, can you play tennis? I went, play tennis? I can barely walk. And she went, that's the man for me. And she picked me. And then started messing around. And then I started doing some open spots as Sol. And I was very uncomfortable. I thought it was too Jewish. And I thought it was going to create anti-Semitism, truly. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it for a couple of months. And I was running a club in Islington, and somebody took the pub over, and they didn't want comedy, so we moved a couple of times, and then I started writing for Sol properly. I probably had about 7-8 minutes or something, and I was doing little bits here and there. And then it came to the end of the year, and we moved. The pub would only let me have Thursday night, and I needed Friday and Saturday, or at least one of the nights. And they said, no, you can't have it. And I thought, you know what? It looks like it's the end of the club. I better do something with this Sol Bernstein. Now, my friend that I'm going to France to visit next week had seen me do Sol, and he said, I think that's really good. And I said, thanks. And he said to me, would you do the Edinburgh Festival? I said, yeah. I said, I'd love to. He said, well, what would stop you? I said, the money. He went, you've got the money. And he gave me the money.
No way.
Gave me the money to do. I did 2003. I did my first Edinburgh Festival. And
that was your first ever, and it was Sol Bernstein.
Yep. Yeah. We lost the money. I said, no, you'll lose the money. I don't want to do it, even I can afford to lose it. 5-6 grand it was. He said, I couldn't afford to lose it, don't worry.
Wow.
So, and the funny thing was that when he really liked that, because before we'd had a bit of not a fallout, but one night he said to me, we were talking, and I said, you had got a problem with me doing comedy. I said, I just feel it. What is? He went, I'm funnier than you. It should be me doing it. So I said, so what's stopping? Do it. You know, go ahead, fucking do it. Don't cost
Yeah.
anything. But you know, he didn't. He never wanted to do it. But once I started doing soul, for some reason, he liked that and kind of lost all that. No, it wasn't a jealousy thing, but he was just, I don't know. He just said I should be doing. I'm funnier than you, and he knows that soul's funnier than him. Soul's funnier than me.
Got
I'm
it.
not,
Got it. Got
Noel
it. Got it.
Bernstein's funnier than Steve Jameson ever was.
But you've raised quite a question, or like quite a question. You raised something that I find quite important when you're talking about like writing soul and being like, oh, this is just gonna like raise anti-Semitism, but not just that. But then like, did you? How much of Steve did you bring into Soul, or like what other worries did you have, or like what other things you had that made you basically push back for such a pretty long time, you know, to unleash
Yeah,
Soul.
I never pushed back. I always came out as Jewish. There was no question of that. Because I tell you what, because I wrote, I can't. It must be 27 years old. Maybe I've been doing this for 30 years now. One of the very first jokes, a very early joke, was I've just been voted Jewish Comedian of the Year by Hamas. I've been doing that for fucking. It's a joke that's I've never not done. I think one of the first jokes I ever wrote, I'd walk on the stage and say, "Hi, nice to be here. I had a bit of a problem getting in the building." I said, one of the security guys stopped me at the door. He said, "Are you Jewish?" I went, "Yeah, you got a problem with that?" He said, "No." He said, "I wonder if you could alter my jacket." Because, but when I was doing it, Jews weren't, the older audiences would get it. Younger Jews didn't really get that old Jews were tailors, that was a big,
Taylor's, yeah.
um, but that was a very early joke. I mean, again, an audience that was kind of slightly more mature would get it and laugh. So I was Jewish from the beginning. There's no question. With
Right,
soul,
right.
just soul was kind of. I mean, my material isn't so Jewish, but soul is. When I'm on stage, I just feel very Jewish. I'm delighted about it. I'm very proud of that. The bit I do about being Jewish, I say, I'm a Jew and I'm proud to be Jewish. Make no bones about that.
And
That
sorry, go on.
that's who I am. That's who he is, sort of thing.
And would you say that soul is your version of perhaps addressing things, or like the getting the liberty of doing things that do you feel like you can do, or like you would say something as soul, but you wouldn't necessarily do it or say it as Steve?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, no question. Yeah, 100% yes. Which is one of the joys of hiding behind a character. Whether it be talking about, you know, giving the Palestinians their own homeland, and the audience go, "Yeah," I went, "Yeah, I think we should give them Germany." Right? So a lot of people wouldn't say that. I don't know the way I took the way Soul talks to women from the stage. A younger comic wouldn't get away with calling women bitches. Call a woman a bitch or something. That just Soul does that. But for the Touchwood, thank goodness, gets away with it.
And when you've wait, well, oh yeah, actually, this is a pre-question, because you were talking like pre-question. This is about something that you've addressed earlier. You were talking about visiting your cousin in Brighton, and going like, oh, I have a choice. It's between again, killing myself or doing stand-up comedy. But obviously that shows that you were um obviously you're very vulnerable to your cousin, and but you are also in a hand, one hand, open about your struggles. Have you always been this kind of person? Have you always been or like, did you see it as like that's you looking after your well-being, or addressing your like like mental health struggles? Or was it like, how basically emotionally, how trained are you, or like how did you come around that, listening to your emotion and understanding yourself?
I have to say I don't know to be honest with you. With my cousin, I could be vulnerable because you know, listen, I loved him. He was like I say, he was like a brother,
Yeah.
and very very sad when he died because he had a brother, and they weren't that close. They were as kids, but as they grew older, they weren't close. Um, but and I was close with my cousin Tony, but with Carl, it was just a very special. We were both musicians. We were both in the music business at the same time. So we had so apart from being family, we had the music
Mm.
thing in common. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, when people talk about stress and mental health, I know that I kind of think being neurotic is part of being Jewish. I think most Jews I know are neurotic, but in a nice way. I'm not talking Meshiga. They're going to go out and stab anybody and kill people. We're all a little crazy, and I think you have to be a bit crazy to do stand-up comedy. I suppose that can you be 100% normal and do it? I don't know. Maybe you can. I don't know. I mean, I've got friends. The friends I've got, they seem pretty normal, but then again, what's normal?
Yeah.
I don't mean.
You are right.
I mean, are you
Sorry, go
normal?
on.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself normal? You're doing stand-up. You've been
No,
doing
no,
it
of
for.
course. I mean, I have a piece of paper to prove that I am not. I've been diagnosed with a personality disorder. So
Okay.
here is my here is my proof, like my evidence that I'm not. But I feel like I agree with you to the respects of like, and I also like what is normal. Yeah, like what is the neuro wait, because neurodivergent is the someone who is not say normal, but then who is like what's how do you treat or like how do you even know? I feel like to what you said, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the fact that I don't think just in comedy, I think just in life. If you once you've lived certain things, once you've gone through stuff, the whole again you will be changed by those things, and those things they basically is like we are we get modeled with time into the person
Yeah.
that we are today, and that affects or like your well-being or like your mental health as much as say I don't know, say if you fall off the bike, you scratch your elbow, you that will affect your physical appearance for a while.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's the same way as in like whatever we do or like whatever we live will leave a scar on us. Again, whether it's for good or for bad, it's up to us to decide or not to decide, but to make whatever we make of it. We are more in control, but that scar is there.
Yeah. But on the neurotic thing, I mean, I just know that all my life, if I get a bee in my bonnet about something, I'll keep going on and on about it. I think that's why the guy said to me originally that he thought I was neurotic, and I don't even remember doing it, but I must have done it. I think I was probably talking about the relationship that with my friend and my wife, and like he was thinking, forget about it. I went, I can't forget about it. He's fucked my life up. Suddenly I was with a
I
woman
mean,
that I thought I loved,
you
and
know,
it's over now.
there is a Romanian joke which I think it translates to English something like this, where it's again like actually the same scenario where this guy finds out that his one of his neighbors, actually no friend, but one of his neighbors took his wife and ran away with her. But now he's calling to basically he's calling to try and like at least apologize. And the guy's like, I don't want to pick up the phone. So then the person who picked up the phone, who's a friend of the now like single husband, goes like, oh, but like, okay, but do you want me then to give him a message from you? And he goes like, yeah, wish him good luck.
Oh,
And I think,
you cut out there.
oh, okay, so basically the joke goes that this person who picks up the phone for the single husband now goes like, okay, well, he doesn't want to talk to you, but then he turns to the husband and he goes, hey, do you wanna tell him something? And the husband's only words are, yeah, wish him good luck because he needs it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I was almost like thinking about, where it's kind of like, yeah, all the best, and you'll definitely
Yeah, yeah,
need a lot of it.
yeah, yeah.
So it's yeah, I feel like in the Romanian version it's much better because again we have such a nuanced way of even creating insults and stuff like this. It's quite similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Yiddish swear words or like the Yiddish insults. I feel like
Yeah, I know a few.
they
Yeah,
they combine they combine quite a bit in Romania because we have again the similar style where we don't just tell someone to like fuck off. We tell them to go to places that they've never experienced before in this sort of
yeah.
way.
I mean,
But
one of my favorites was Chob Varsha, which means send them to Warsaw. I remember the first time I heard that, the Yiddish man said, Chob Varsha, what does that mean? He said, let them go to
send them
Warsaw.
to Warsaw. But when now that you've kind of like you've learned all these things about your family and where they come from, have you actually been to Belarus? Have you been anywhere near?
No, I kind of wouldn't mind, but now you've got all this problem, obviously, because it's so close to the Ukraine, and Belarus is Putin's best friend. Um, so I'm kind of reluctant now. And also, I don't know
Which is
exactly
fair.
where they were. So it's not like I can go to a village and say, okay, they came
Yeah,
from that
here's
place.
and with Sol, because you're talking about. Have you ever been able to? Have you been able to like? Have you seen your old agent ever since you started doing Sol?
My no, the one who told me it was with David Bowie. No, no, no.
Yeah.
He sadly he passed away a few years ago, and did try to reach him. I was trying to find out, and he must have died about 20 years ago. So I'm not sure I was even doing
No.
soul, or maybe I was. But I heard he was living in Brighton, and I couldn't find him. But I did want to tell him. And the weird thing was, I'd been doing soul. I'd been doing stand up for. I think I'd been doing stand up for about 12, 14 years before I remembered that.
Oh,
I
wow.
was telling somebody the story, and then Ken Pitt said, oh my God. He said that in 1972, and I never started till 1993.
Wow. So that's 20, what, 19 years
Yeah,
later.
which proves I'm not a good listener, right?
I mean, the thing is, from what you were saying, it shows that there were loads of signs, like there were loads of people who would like nudge you in that direction.
Yeah,
But I guess again, ultimately, we are in charge of our own, destiny, and we make the steps.
yeah, and
But I think, sorry, go on.
yeah, and I think I'm not that clever. The signs were there, and I never saw them. I don't know why.
But what was it like then when? Because we were chatting for a bit before we started recording, and one of the things that you mentioned is that your dad was a very funny man.
Great joke teller.
What was his like what was his, or like actually what was your both parents or anyone else in your family's thoughts when you went like, oh, actually I'm doing comedy? Like how far into the journey as well did you actually share with them that you're doing this?
Oh, right from the beginning.
And even with Soul?
Yeah, I think my mother. I was doing soul. I think maybe my mother had already died when I started doing soul. But
Right.
my father knew. The thing is, when my mother died, he lived another 13 years, but he basically died when she died. He kind of gave up. So I'd
Right.
say to him, come. Do you want to come and see Soul? Do you want to see what I'm doing? He went, nah.
Mm.
He couldn't be bothered to come and see me. But okay.
I mean, it's understandable. I feel like it's not easy.
Yeah, but he was a great joke teller. I saw him make a speech, It was his best friend, who was my uncle Willie, who was my godfather. And it was one that he had three daughters, and my father made a speech to the bride's father, obviously to his friend,
Yeah.
at the big a wedding, like one of those big Jewish weddings, 100 guests, 200 people, 100 couples, and he was fantastic, and I was so proud of him.
No way.
Yeah,
How old were you?
I'd never seen him make a. I was in my 20s. I was already in my 20s, um, and I just sat there, and I remember when he walked up there, and I thought, oh God, I'm kind of sitting. I don't know what he's going to do, and he just was fucking amazing. He was so funny.
And do you have any siblings?
No, no,
Wow.
my cousin Carl was like was like the brother.
Of course. Yeah. And now, when you're again, like after all these years of doing soul, um, how do you? Because it's quite like again, it's a because you talked about like the things soul says, but also like soul's persona is full of energy. Is like such an. I feel like even with the from the short clips that I found or the things that I've seen, is like such a positive, just the attitude.
But that's
If
what
you,
comedy.
yeah, how
That's
do
what
you keep
comedy is
that
all
up?
about.
How can you do that? How do you manage to find this sort of like positivity and energy and attitude? And it's almost like regardless of whatever is happening, regardless of how even like how long it's been since you've done soul. Because and again, I might be wrong, but I feel like having seen other character character comedy routines or anything like that, they don't tend to last again so long, because at one point people who do them, they're like, oh, actually, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't. The thing is, I mean, I love doing it. It gives me great pleasure. Thank God, touch wood, I'm getting booked. People are booking me, and booking me back. So that's really important. Like I say, you don't leave show business; it leaves you. So that
Fair.
there may come a time where the phone stops ringing or the emails stop coming in asking me to perform. In that case, when that day comes, then I stop. Until then, as long as I got the strength to keep doing it, the energy. I don't know. It's just I love doing the character. It's great fun. I'll tell you something. When I was going right back to when I was a kid, talking about music,
Mm,
the one thing was been a constant in my life, not to be in comedy, but I wanted to be on the stage. So initially, that was
right.
being a singer, and possibly I wanted to be a movie star when I was 12 or something like that. But I've seen Hollywood movies and musicals and stuff like that, so I loved all that stuff. So that's been a constant. So the truth of the matter, and somebody recently said to me, and he said, "Do you consider yourself successful?" I said, "Yes, very successful." He went, "But you don't do radio or television." I went, "No." I said, "Nobody's interested in me for radio or television." I said, "But you know what? When I was a kid, I had a dream. I wanted to be on the stage." I said, "I'm 78 years old, and I'm still on the stage." I said, "A lot of people in that at that age are not on stage anymore, and they miss it, and I don't have to miss it because I'm working."
That's
So,
beautiful.
and genuinely, and I absolutely love what I do. I mean, I don't know how much longer my health's going to keep up. So I can carry on doing it. I mean, driving late at night is really tiring me out. That's getting
Which is understandable.
that's
Yeah.
getting hard. But I mean, like on the weekend, I stayed away the whole weekend. I was Friday and Saturday in Sheffield. Sunday I was further up north. So I had from Sheffield to get to a place called Yarm, which is in Middlesbrough. It was like about 98 miles or something, which was fine during the day. But Monday I
Mm.
came back, and Monday I had 250 miles to drive back.
Oh God.
And I left there about 9:30 in the morning, and I did it in one go. I never stopped. And I got home just after 2 o'clock. I mean, I was wrecked. I was absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But I did. And driving during the day is a lot easier. But I couldn't have done it on the. They said, "Oh, do you want to stay over on this Sunday night? I'll get you a hotel." I went, "Yes, please," because the last thing I want to do is to drive 4.5, 5 hours after I've done a show at that time, 10, 11 at night. It's madness.
Yeah.
That's a good way to get yourself killed, I think, or to get into have an accident.
And do you like again? Do you? Because it sounds like by the way you've put thought into it. So I guess you've adjusted, or like, are you constantly adjusting the way you prioritize again your like mental and physical health? Sorry, so that you can again maintain, you know, doing this and keeping soul for as long as possible.
Yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, I guess to a certain extent I must do. I know, for example, if I'm going to be working 3, 4 nights, I won't have lunch with the boys. Because that means I've got to get the train into town, and then that's going to
Yeah,
be an hour and a half to 2 hours, door to door, time I get into the city. So I won't do that sort of stuff, and I'll stay at home and I'll rest. Um, yesterday I was
I
in town
see.
all day. Today I'm gonna be sitting in the garden this afternoon with my cat. We've had a cat for about 8 weeks. We got
No
a
way.
rescue cat, and I never not liked animals, but I was never particularly an animal lover. But we've got this little cat, and he's called Louis. He's 11 years old, and I absolutely adore him. I can't
No
believe
way.
I
This is
can't believe I
amazing.
feel the way I feel about a cat.
We've got two cats and I love them. I think again we got two also rescue cats, and I think
Yeah,
they made my life so much more beautiful.
yeah, yeah. It's the maddest thing. My wife. Basically, what had happened was my wife. I'm married for the fourth time, and thank goodness I met this woman because she is the best. One regret: I wish I would have met her 30 years ago, but I'd have been a different person 30 years ago. But she came from
That's
Shropshire, so
beautiful.
she lived in the country and always had cats. And she moved down to London. We met 18 years ago, and then she moved down 17 years ago. And initially, I was living in Camden. I had a small a studio apartment in Belsize Park. She came down. It was like one room and a bathroom and kitchen. We were there. I think she was there a couple of years with me. Then we moved to Muswell Hill and got a two-bedroom apartment. Um, and Wendy works for the NHS. So when the lockdown started, it was agreed that because she wasn't a nurse, she was admin, she could work from home. So when the COVID thing kind of disappeared, they said you can carry on working from home. And she said, well, in that case, I'd really love to have a garden because we were on a first floor flat,
Hmm.
and I'd love to get a cat. So I said, okay. So we looked, and through some friends, we found Chesham, and we found a little house that we fell in love with, and we got it. And we had new carpets, and Wendy said, right, we'll have the new carpets done and the house decorated. I want to get a cat. And the last day, the guy had finished doing the carpets, and he was standing outside having a cigarette and the last cup of tea. He said, whatever you do, do not get a cat. He said, because they will tear this carpet to pieces. It was like kind of stripy sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Wendy heard, you mustn't get, she said, no. He said, they'll ruin your carpet. He said, you've just spent, I don't know, £1,200. I don't know what we spent on it. Anyway, the years went by. We've been here 4 years. And then the end of last year, a neighbour's cat started coming over. And I kind of fell in
Oh,
love with that. A girl cat called Tiny, who we called Princess. And she'd come over and we'd feed her, and then she'd go back over there. And then this was going on a few months. And then, I don't know, about 9 weeks ago, Wendy said, you know what, come on, I'll try and, I want to get a cat. And there's a cat rescue, I don't know I can't remember the name, but they wouldn't let anybody in this street have a cat because we were like only 150 yards away from a main road. So
right.
we talked to neighbours, and they said, "Oh, we tried to get a cat from them. That you should go Battersea. Battersea have no illusions. They don't care where you live. They just want the cat to have a good home." So it turned out
Yeah.
Wendy. We went online, and Wendy found this cat, and she phoned up. She was talking to him, and she said, "Right, we want a cat." She said, This is the cat we want." And they said, "No, no, we take your details, and we decide which cat you get. We match that cat to your requirements." It was a bit snotty, but
Right.
when they said okay. Anyway, we went there on the Saturday. And Bashir, they said, "Oh, we've matched you up with this particular cat." Wendy said, "That's the cat we wanted." And we bought this
No
little
way.
bubbler home. He's 11 years old. He took a little while to settle in. I know 3 weeks. They said, "Don't let him out," but we did. We let him out just after 3 weeks, and then he disappeared for 22 hours, and it was like losing
Oh,
like a child. What do we do? What's happened? I don't know. And he was out from the evening, and he turned up the next day in the evening, and he looked famished. He didn't know where he was. For shut it. He was like, I don't know. He was in a mess. He was confused. He came in. He didn't know, and we fed him, and he let him sleep with us in the room that night. And jumped on the bed. He kept climbing on my head. I kept telling him to fuck off, and
oh.
it was like mad. And then a couple of days, he kind of settled in, and he's absolutely glorious. Just love him. And in fact, yes, I was out. I went out yesterday, but Wendy said she put two chairs out in the garden, and she actually worked with her laptop from the garden yesterday, and he sat under a chair all day.
Oh,
Came in
that's
for something to
beautiful.
eat, but then went back, and he was in the shade, and he's just glorious. The only thing he doesn't do, which Wendy said her old cats when she was a kid would jump on her lap and sit with her. He's a little bit more independent. You put him on your lap, he jumps off again. He won't stay. I don't know if maybe after a few months, because he's different now
I
than when he
mean,
started. Yeah.
with we've got because I've got two, so they are sisters. One is called Pickle, the other one's called Sarma, and
Uh,
they do the same thing. They're just over a year old now,
oh
and
wow.
they will bump their heads onto you a little bit.
Right.
You give them some pets, but then when they are done, they are done. Which I find quite hilarious because they sometimes they come and they are like looking for affection, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
like when time's up, time's up. There is no breaking the rules,
And
and
you know,
I kind of I respect that, but I also sometimes I do feel the same way where I'm like, I wish I could just,
yeah.
like have them in like my lap all day or like just. But again, in the other hand, I respect them very much,
My friend
and they are
Martin, who
so
lives,
wonderful too.
yeah, I know, because you're not far from Chingford.
No, no, I'm actually like again, kind of like around the corner.
Yeah, my friend Martin is sadly his wife passed away last year. She was a mad cat lover, but they got four cats, and he's kind of been telling me, he said, "Oh, they're independent. They when they want food, they come, and you think, oh, they love me now." And he went, then they fuck off again. It's just they just do what they want. He said, I think these cats love me. He said they certainly love my wife. I mean, I can see he follows Wendy around. He follows her more than me. But
Oh,
if she was like one day she goes to the office one day a week just to go into London. He'll follow me
yeah.
around if it's only me in the house.
And I see this with my partner, and I was a bit jealous. I'll be honest with you at the beginning.
Yeah, I
But
understand it.
the funny thing is that one of them is more affectionate towards my partner, but then the other one's more affectionate towards me.
Ah, okay.
So my partner would has like Pickle, who's like fully black cat, and she kind of I feel like she hates me, I think. But then we have another cat who's called Sarma, and she's like a tuxedo cat. She's actually probably like a Sol Bernstein, actually.
Right.
Yeah, because she's just got like a little tuxedo, and that's it. And
Right.
she's also the one. Well, in this regard, maybe not like Sol, but she's actually the one that's a bit dumber. But she's also the one more affectionate towards me, and I love her a lot. But the thing is that sometimes she would climb on the sofa to come sit next to me, but then she would fall off the sofa.
Oh,
Or like
really?
she would try to like yeah, like she would try to kind of like get my attention by rolling on the sofa, but then she would roll too close to the edge, that you the last thing you see is just a little arm that's trying to hold on.
Uh, but they're babies. I mean,
And
Louis is 11.
but that's beautiful. I love older cats. I think I have them I have William back in Romania, where my family has William, and I absolutely adore him. I think he's like maybe actually yeah, he's about 10 or 11 now as well.
Yeah,
He's
I
one
mean,
of
this one I
the
can't.
funniest cats. I've never. S
Yeah,
Sorry,
you're
go on.
coming in and out a little bit.
Oh, I was gonna say that I feel like with William, he's the first time I've seen disappointment on a cat's face where, I shook a bag of treats just to try and make him get out of the kitchen and then
Right.
not give him the treats. And that was the last time I've
Uh,
done it because I could see the anger in his face where he was like, "Oh, I hope you die." And I was like, "Okay, noted. I'll never do this again."
you dirty Jew, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like I hate you,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
liar, big liar. But Steve, it's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely, you too.
Well, you were the last thing that I wanted to ask you is because you said obviously you're already very busy, but then if people want to see your work, get in touch or anything like that, where are you most active, and where should people go to find your work? Yeah,
Facebook really is the place I kind of do most of my tell people where I'm working. Occasionally on,
and that's Saul Bernstein.
yeah. Um, Also, I do put it on X or what used to be Twitter, but that's it's just so evil now. Uh, that whole page.
Yeah,
I do have a website, and I'm very lazy. I should put all my stuff on the website, and I don't.
what's the
But I
website? Is
think
it saulbernstein.com?
yeah,
But the
soulbursting.com
Facebook
and
page is
.co.uk.
the oh nice. I've only
Actually,
got the
yeah,
.com.
I should put all the advertise all the gigs. But what happens is, for example, like your gig, I just roughly know where it is, so I can't put that date down and say it's at so and so because I don't have the information. Like somebody will phone me, do you want to do a gig in Chesterfield near Sheffield? Well, yeah, okay. What's the money? Blah blah. Yeah, lovely. Send details nearer the time. Okay. So that's all I know. I know I'm in a certain area, but I don't know the name of the bar, the pub, the club, or I mean, if I'm playing the Glee clubs, I know where I am. You know,
Yeah.
I I could. That's easy. And certain clubs, Sheffield at the weekend was. I knew that where that was. I mean, my favourite thing is when somebody books me for something, and then they put a poster on Facebook, and then I can share that poster. That for me is the easiest way to do it because then I'll do it a couple of times, so the promoter can see that I've tried to promote the show, and then also it tells people where I'm going to be. So
Perfect. That
yeah,
sounds good.
that works for me. But basically, I'm kind of lazy. You know? I should get I should get somebody to
I
do
mean,
all this
look,
stuff for me.
I think you've got enough going on, and it's good. I think, and again, look, lazy or not, it's working. You're doing well. You're
Yeah,
busy, and
yeah.
that's what matters.
I'm putting food on the table every week,
Yeah,
feed, feeding my cat.
that's which is very important. I think they love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he does
But
particularly love it.
well, Steve, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
My
Um,
pleasure. It was
looking
lovely meeting you and talking to you.
Likewise, and I'm looking forward to do this again. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon. Be well.
Okay, well, that was it. Did you have a good time? I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and that's it from me. Again, check out the summary of this episode to get the links to Saul's or Steve's, social media. And I think he was saying that on his Facebook there is a list of the gigs that he's doing. And as he goes from me, yeah, also have a look on my social media for my gigs. And enjoy. Have a nice week. If you're in the UK, good luck making it through the heat wave this week. And that's it. From me, Pickle and Sarma. I'm looking at Pickle now, and she's sleeping by the window. Um, but from me, Pickle and Sarma, until next week, stay skillful. Goodbye.